All right. So I just finished reading the lovely apocryphal book of Bel and the Dragon, starring Daniel and the King of Babylon, and, co-starring Habakkuk, some angry mobs, a dragon, and a god Bel, as well as some priests and their wives and children. So, that's the cast. The first part of this has already explained kind of like the overview, reading through the whole 42 verses using the app, the app called Apocrypha. So let's see. Sorry, I'm getting all these weird ads. I'm just trying to get back to my app. Dang it, I don't want any of this. How do I stop? How does this stop? This needs to go away. Jeez. It's gonna make me play this stupid game? Okay, well, anyways, I can't get back in the app because it's now a game. But anyways, okay, so let me look at some of my little show notes here, because, man, so if there's anything you missed and you don't know the story, you're gonna have to listen to part 1 or read Bel and the Dragon in the Apocrypha on your own. You can get the Apocrypha app. You can just Google it, and I'm sure you can find a free Apocrypha if you have the internet, if you have a library, if you have online library access. I mean, the Bible's very free to come across these days, so if you need one, you can get that. So here, there are some things that stick out to me. So overall, Bel and the Dragon is, I was thinking before, this is almost a combination of Daniel's story being in the lion's den, back with King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, and now he's in Babylon again with this other king, during the time of Habakkuk, and apparently, I guess, Daniel and Habakkuk were buddies. They're both prophets. I don't really know the timelines of any of this stuff, but in the book of Revelations, you do see a lot about lions and dragons and Babylon, this name Bel, and so, yeah, that's kind of, in general, some themes that come up a lot in other parts of the Bible. Even if you don't have an Apocrypha, this isn't a completely unfamiliar kind of thing. I do find it interesting for somebody to have been thrown in the lion's den more than once in their life. That is shocking. I do find it also interesting that someone has befriended more than one king and been their buddy or bestie or right-hand man kind of guy, and still having a place, he had a place in society, in a kingdom, and was, more than once in his life, and was, looked at by royalty as someone who can be trusted, someone favorable, someone knowledgeable enough to be a politician of sorts, but he was a worshiper of God, whereas, as we can see, Babylon was not on board with worshiping the one biblical God. Babylon had a lot of other things that Babylon was worshiping. How Daniel found himself there, I will need to go back and reread all of that. But for now, I don't know. I can't remember much. But basically, okay, so Bel and the Dragon. Already, that name is so, interesting, because it's Bel isn't a person. Bel is an idol. There aren't that many stories I can think of in the Bible, in the traditional Bible. So I want to say traditional as in Old and New Testament, no Apocrypha added. So the typical kind of traditional Bible that you would find doesn't really have books that are kind of dedicated to a specific idol or two types of idols. So the dragon was also, I guess it was a living dragon. I don't know if that's why this didn't make it into the Bible. I don't know. I'm not even looking at the history of how Bel and the Dragon historically came about, but I know that there's a lot of themes in here, like I'm mentioning, that are biblical themes that have come up before, like especially Daniel and the kings and the lions and the dens, and him getting killed for, or potentially gonna be getting killed for not worshiping something in Babylon that, you know, I don't know why they were pressuring this guy to worship these things that, it's like, who cares what he's worshiping? Like, you know, why do these kings need him to worship it too? And it's like, didn't they know? I mean, it sounds like they were friends with him, and it's like, don't they know that, like, he's not trying to, like, worship it? Like, you know, like, when you have a friend, you kind of know, like, in general, their kind of take on religious and spiritual matters, you know, in general. Even if you don't know all the details, you eventually know about their upbringing and stuff like that, especially if they're comfortable talking about it. But it's like, you know, usually these aren't like first meeting kind of conversations. Usually it's like you're pretty involved with a person when you're talking about religion. And so it's kind of interesting that, like, these guys are friends. They're different culturally. They're different. He's Jewish. The Babylonians are, I don't know what they were considered. But they apparently had multiple gods. And Bel was one of them. So Bel was his idol, where the priests would fake that this was a real god, and people would come in, the king would come in, people would come in, they leave meat, they leave beverages, wine, different things for this idol, assuming that it's real. The king believed it was real. I'm sure others believed in Babylon that it was real, and they would feed it. Apparently that's what they thought they were doing, was feeding this live idol. What it looked like, I don't really know, but the reason why I find it significant is that we hear this word Bel a lot. So in Hebrew, if you're familiar with how Hebrew is as a language and written, so Hebrew is kind of like, in a way, similar to Japanese in that it's like a vowel consonant kind of language, very much so. But a lot of times, something's either gonna end with a consonant, meaning that it doesn't have a vowel sound attached to the end. But when you write in Hebrew, you don't really write out vowels. Now, there are different types of symbols that take a vowel sound, like the ayin and the aleph and the yod, and like they take like a y or I or e or a or o kind of sounds. But I think there are 22 symbols in the Hebrew alphabet, if I'm wrong. They call it the alphabet. And aleph is the first letter and beit is the second letter. And so this language has A, B. So alphabet, the alphabet, the alphabet, whatever you want to call it, right? But the second letter is beit, so it would be B. And the L is like, it's called lamed, but I don't know what, it basically is, it can be used as is it called a preposition, like to, like, where you're saying like when someone says to life, they say la chaim. So the L and then chaim is life. So la is like L, like to life. So you can kind of attach it to the beginning of things, to say like to this, to that, whatever, you know. I don't even know why I'm going there, but basically talking about the letters in the word Bel, B and L, you see those letters again in other places. And I'm wondering, and I haven't looked this up yet, but I'm wondering if Bel and Baal, Baal, are the same god, because you see that god a lot in Babylon too, not too, but also, There's the Baal, and then this one's BL. But in Hebrew, unless they're using those A symbols, they wouldn't be spelling it differently. So let me see if I can look that up on my own. So there's Baal. I think Baal is more like a bull. Am I wrong with this? I don't know. I could go into this detail forever. I just want to know the difference between these two. I'm not trying to learn a whole other topic. I just want to know if they're the same thing and how they would be spelled. It starts talking about Murdoch. I don't even know. So, okay, so this helps actually. So, well, it's Wikipedia. So, how much are we trusting Wikipedia today? If you look up Baal, Baal, it says to speak aloud, and the alias Lord Baal was used instead as Bel, Bel, was used for Marduk. That's what happens when you look up Baal or Baal. I don't know. I know the English accented or American English accented Hebrew words for things, and I know the American pronunciation of things, and some of these words aren't in any of those languages, so it's I only kind of know how to pronounce them the way that I've learned, and there are multiple pronunciations if you've been to as many different religious things as I have been. There are multiple ways to pronounce things, but so basically Bel, it says in mythology, also Wikipedia, it says Bel signifying Lord or Master, which is lowercase, not Lord capital L with lowercase ORD, which was Baal. So I'm reading from two different links here. So it says Lord or Master is a little, sorry, I can't read. It's late, guys. It's dark in here. What the hell? It's 5:20 p.m. Anyways, Bel signifying Lord or Master is a title rather than a genuine name applied to, and then it says linguistically Bel is an East Semitic form cognate with the Northwest Semitic Baal with the same meaning. So here we go. Okay, so finally that's an answer, right? It's the same meaning. It's kind of what I was thinking. And so basically that's not something that was supposed to be worshipped. And that's why I was interested in, it's called Bel and the Dragon. It's a really short story. And Bel is basically a god that, God literally was don't worship it. And they were worshiping it. And so if you look at, so you're looking at Iran. I don't know where exactly Daniel was coming there from, and Habakkuk was in whatever Jewry was called. I don't know where that was, but he didn't know where Babylon. He'd never been to Babylon, and he didn't know where the lion's den is at. So Habakkuk had never been to Babylon. So he probably wasn't that nearby then. So yeah. So that's the name Bel. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface of anything here. But now that we know that they're the same person, the same thing, I don't even know what it was. I don't even know who Marduk is. But anyways, there's Bel, which is this ancient idol deity that has been around a while. People were worshiping it in Babylon. And then there's also a dragon that people were worshiping in Babylon. And it seems like it was in the same area as Bel, right? I already talked about the fact that Daniel himself is the main. I don't know if Daniel or the king would be the main characters in this story, but let's say Daniel because he's got more of a reputation. I don't know. All these kings kind of have reputations depending whose history it is. it's all Middle Eastern history, guys. It's deep. Like, this is like ancient stuff, and when you start connecting the dots of time periods in history, and you're like, oh, this person was king here and this was happening in that place, and it's interesting stuff. But I want to get to the point that I'm trying to actually say here, which is kind of more towards talking about the dragon. But let me get through the other few points too. So the lion's den is something we see come up before. So in Daniel, when he was with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, I can't remember their Hebrew names. I think it was like Azariah, Hananiah, and Mishael or something like that. But they had I don't know if it was like Babylonian names. I don't even know what language that is, but yes. So basically, this time he was in there 6 days, and then there were 7 lions, and it says on the 7th day, that's when the king came. He was already mourning because he was pretty sure that Daniel had already been eaten by the lions. And that's another point I want to kind of talk about too. But before that, I want to talk about the symbolism of numbers. So there's this number theory, numerical theory. I don't know if it stems from numerology in any way, but it's ancient. I don't know if it's a Kabbalistic practice, but I believe it is. And there's called gematria. I don't really know how to pronounce it or say it, but there's a lot of symbolism in the Bible with numbers. So sometimes you'll always kind of, when you pay attention to it, you'll notice it's kind of weird, right? Things always happen in a certain number of days. There's always like a 7th day and a 6th day and a 40 days. You see those numbers a lot. You see like, on the 8th day. So it's kind of like, that's when males, they would circumcise their male babies on the 8th day after birth. And so usually in the Bible, when you see the number 6, that's an evil number. 666 comes up in Revelation. You see here, because that's considered the mark of the beast. You see here that you have 6. 6 days he was in there. So for 6 days, Daniel was in this lion's den. This is a separate lion's den from the Nebuchadnezzar lion's den. This is a different lion's den. Here he is again in a freaking lion's den by himself after the mob wants to throw him into the den. Mind you, we'll get to the king later. We'll get to the king and his killing issues. But 6 is considered an evil number. 7 is considered a holy number. And when you have the number 8, that's one more than holy. But 7, that's why they're like 6 days, the Lord worked and labored, or 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the 7th is the Lord's day, like that kind of thing. Or like in 6 days the Lord created the heavens and the earth, and the 7th he rested. You see 7 coming up with the Sabbath. You see 7 coming up with day of rest. You see 7 coming up here again with him being, no longer about to be eaten by lions, right? So the 7th day is the day that the king came to check on Daniel. Yes, and then the prophet Habakkuk came in with the food, with all that food, the pottage and the broken bread, whatever that meal was that he was going to feed the people reaping his fields. He was making dinner for the people who were working for him in his fields, and an angel of the Lord came and told him, take this food to Daniel. And Habakkuk, this prophet, didn't know where Babylon was, didn't know where the lion's den was, and he was somehow teleported there, gave Daniel the food, they gave praise to God, Daniel ate it, he lived, the king came, and then the angel took him back, right? He took Habakkuk back to his farm, and then, the 7th day, the king comes back to check on on Daniel, and he's sad and depressed, thinking, hey, like, he's definitely been eaten by these hungry lions because they hadn't been fed, and he's one guy and there's 7 of them. They're definitely going to tear this guy apart. And so that didn't happen because it just didn't happen that way. The lions didn't touch Daniel, and Habakkuk came and fed Daniel, so he didn't starve to death either. But he did live for 6 days without food. Now that is in itself already a really long time. And nearly impossible. So he was probably nearly starving to death. As well as, the risk of being eaten alive by lions. But, and then Habakkuk was teleported out of his farm to feed Daniel. And then after Daniel gets out, the king gets pissed off and throws the other people who threw Daniel into the lion's den. He throws them in there and they get eaten immediately by those lions. And then, the king starts saying, hey, Daniel, you're right. Your God is the real God. Because clearly he would have been eaten otherwise, right? Your God is the real God. And he gave, I don't understand this part too much either, but he gave the idol of Bel to Daniel. Daniel destroyed the idol and he destroyed the temple. And then basically here comes the king again with like, oh, Daniel, we also worship the dragon. It's like, come on. After he just survived a risky almost getting killed and eaten by lions for literally, it was because he was challenging this deity, challenging the cultural belief of this deity and the practice of worshiping it. Eventually, because he destroyed, the priests got killed because of him. That's what it looks like to the public. The priest got killed because of him. Bel got killed because of him. And then he goes and kills this dragon. And he had destroyed the temple. And now they show him a dragon that is a living thing that, the people worship. And then the dragon gets killed by Daniel too. So they really wanted to kill him, that's why they threw him up in that lion's den. I think that's the order it happened in, actually. I think he got thrown in after he had destroyed everything, and all their gods and everything. I mean, he's basically destroyed he killed their priest with the kids and wives. He killed their dragon god. He killed Bel. And destroyed the temple. I mean, that would be almost equivalent to somebody coming in and saying, like, I'm gonna destroy the Christian church and burning down all the churches and, like, destroying all the Bibles. I mean, people are gonna be outraged, Nobody's gonna be like, oh, yes, please destroy my religion. Nobody wants that. That's definitely not... here, at least where I live, we don't do that. We see a different religion and we're like, oh, I believe something else. And you just walk away or mingle with the people. But that's as far as it goes. It's not like we're not like killing each other over it or anything. At least where I live, that's not how things go. Thank God. And then basically... I wanted to talk, so the last 2 topics, so the king, and then I'm going to get more into this, like, the Bel stuff, the teleporting stuff, and the dragon stuff. That's really what I want to talk about. But first, we got to talk about these kings. This king, this is your friend. Daniel's your friend, and you instead of letting people... Well, I understand in a way, they threaten to kill you or destroy your property. And then you're like, fine, like, take Daniel, kill him, But I mean, it's kind of like, at the same time, he was mourning. It's like, okay, so you see the king upset, sad, and mourning, right, about these people. killing or potentially trying to kill his friend by throwing him into the lion's den. But he's the one responsible. He's the one who gave up Daniel, and said, have him, because he didn't want his own stuff destroyed too. So, I mean, he was saving his own and he gave up Daniel, but he was, upset that he thought Daniel was dead, obviously, because he should have been dead, because that is not like a possible circumstance to really survive 7 days. The seventh day this guy comes by, he was either going to be starved to death or eaten by the lions. And so, he was neither. And so, and he was fed by Habakkuk. So it's just a confusing thing. So I just think it's odd and interesting how kings are just kind of like, let me kill this person. There's a lot of pressure on them. I get it. There's pressure on them to do this. But anyways, it's still his decision. And then the king goes and throws all the people who tried to kill Daniel in the lion's den. He throws them all in the lion's den, and the lions go and eat them immediately. And again, this was 7 lions. So let's get into some of this stuff where I think everywhere that you see aliens involved. And I probably should have recorded this part when it was still light outside, because now I'm sitting in the car in the dark and it's kind of creepy. But anyways, anytime when you see, some alien type of, or extraterrestrial type experiences happening in the Bible, it's never explained. Like, this is just, they just call everything's just so matter of fact. They never explain it. They never expand. It's just kind of like, oh, and then there were Nephilim in the land. It's like, oh, where'd they come from? They don't want to tell us any of that. I mean, the book of Enoch explains a lot of that. But anyways, let me not even get off onto this other tangent. I think there were aliens in Babylon. I mean, you can look up theories of aliens in India. A lot of places that have like super ancient cultures, and especially when you see these super ancient technologies, people believe that, aliens gave these technologies to people. All of these astrological, astronomical, mathematical, kind of scientific kind of like findings that people had back in these days. I mean, they really see people experimenting with cannabis, experimenting with different types of psychedelics, and they do this in ancient cultures, and had like healing properties attached to a lot of this stuff, and it would be healing for people. And then the records got destroyed and all the writings get destroyed. And then you don't see it in the biblical history because they never wrote it in there. And it's kind of like this whole weird thing about like, let's not tell them what's really going on. But there's like enough clues just to hint that something was up, right? I mean, I'm sorry. Like, in those days in the Bible, I mean, Jesus was on earth, let's say, like nearly 2020, 2050, I don't know how many years ago, nearly 2,000 years ago. We still estimate it that way. And this was happening before Jesus was even there. Like, this is like way before Jesus. And so if you think about how ancient it was with Jesus, this is before ancient Jesus. This is more ancient than Jesus. So this is way, way back. But you still see that there are some things that were technologically almost more advanced. Now, I'm going to make some leaps here. For either this king was stupid, like fucking idiot, as well as the rest of the population in Babylon, which I doubt, because these people in their history, they may, like, basically we wouldn't have common science and mathematics and astronomy as we have it today if it wasn't for the people of Babylon, Persia, Iran, Chaldeans, whatever you want to call, those people. They're Middle Eastern populations of people that definitely had intelligence there. And so I refuse to believe that this king was a complete idiot along with the rest of the population. I don't think it would be like a Trojan horse, you know what I mean? Like looking like wood, and whatever this Bel god was looking realistic enough to fool people into thinking that it was real. Fool a king. So you're fooling the ruler of the nation into thinking that you actually eat and drink things. I don't know what this thing looked like, or what it was, or how it displayed itself, or how it was made to look. But I would think if it was just some wooden idol sitting there, and then people go under some weird door and eat, and nobody ever sees... I mean, like, is the king really that oblivious that there's like a whole door where people can go in and they're getting this food and they're eating it? And, apparently there was pavement or something there that captured the footprints of all these people coming and going. But, he never knew about it. And I don't think it would be that easy to hide, especially if it's somebody's religion. People challenge things, don't they? They think about like, wow, like, why is it that way? Like, why, why did Daniel live? How did Daniel actually survive with those hungry lions that hadn't eaten anything, and he's there as a perfect meal and they didn't even eat him? Like, what was that all about? You have to question, right? I would question if I had a god that I was praying to that was an idol that was eating things, every day. I would wonder how it does it, why it does it. I would challenge it. And especially if it's a physical thing that you can go and see and you're the king, you would think, this guy would have inspected this thing. Inspect element, right? There's a nerdy tech joke for you. But basically, how would you not inspect it? How would you not know if this thing didn't look real? Like, I'm thinking the technology with this idol, or whatever they use to hide like the doorways and all that, the only thing that was visibly obvious was the pavement with the footprints of people walking to and from, and there was a door, right? Because he noticed that there's a door. So there was a door, and then there was some other method that they were going in and out, because the king had shut the door, because he mentioned, opening the door, shutting the door, bringing the food. So they knew that the king was bringing in the food, put the food in there, shut the door, close the door fast, and, seal it with your symbol. And then the seal wasn't broken. That's another thing that you see too, or the seals and the breaking of seals and things like that. That comes up in Revelations a lot too. And the book of Daniel. There's a lot of overlap with the book of Daniel and the book of Revelations. They're very like, they're apocalyptic to say the least. But it's kind of interesting that you see the themes from those books in a form of a story, making a little bit more sense than when you read like, and then there were these things coming out of this thing, and they ate the other thing, and then the dragon did this to that was coming out of the sky, and they ate, it sounds, like when you read the book of Daniel and Revelations, they almost sound like Greek mythology of like this god had this kid and this one, and they hated each other, so he injured this one, and like that's kind of how it reads. It's very like Greek mythology type of sounding stuff. But this is something else, guys. I mean, it's just matter of fact to these people that it's just like, oh, like, we're just gonna kill this guy. I'm just gonna throw him in the lion's den. And the transporting, so Habakkuk being taken by angels from wherever he's at on his farm near dinner time to go near dinner time he was going to take dinner to the workers, and the angel ends up telling him, take that dinner that you've made, take it over to Babylon to the lion's den, give it to Daniel. And it's interesting. I mean, I don't know, other than when Satan was tempting Jesus and took him to, was it a cliff where he was looking at like all the nations and saying like all this can be yours or something if you bow down and worship Satan? I can't remember what, I shouldn't be like trying to recite things that I don't remember, but I think that's what it was during the story of the temptation of Jesus, where like he took him, like Satan took him somewhere. So it's interesting that you see here Habakkuk being taken from his farm to Babylon. He hadn't even been to Babylon, and that's a major city. That would be almost like saying, like, I've never been to Hollywood. You know, it's like, it's on the map. Like, Babylon is, like, on the map. So, I mean, it's a major player in the Bible. Like, it totally is. Like, there's a lot that takes place in Babylon, guys. But, it's usually known as, like, evil. Like, usually when you see the word and you see, like, something's occurring in Babylon, you're like, there's evil happening in this story. So the setting is just in an evil site. But yeah, I would believe that there was some alien activity happening. And, you know, you see, like, I would say, like, when you hear about angels, I don't even like talking about angels. It's like the freakiest thing. But when you hear about angels, you know, pop culture, common American, you know, you see like those little, what are they, like precious moments, little like blonde little babies. I don't remember if they have wings or not, or like cupids, you know, little winged fairy looking cute little things. In the Bible, angels seemed a little more intense. In the Bible, angels, they mention things about like multiple heads and multiple wings, and like some of them looking like the way they tried to describe them, like they didn't look like pale elves or look like with wings or like little fairies like Tinkerbell or anything. Like they looked like another type of being, basically, that was not like fairies. Like they looked more like like they had like lion, like there's a description of like heads and teeth. I don't know if there's teeth, heads and wings and light and the noise that comes from the wings. What else do you hear about angels? Yeah, people are always afraid of them. That's another thing. They almost always have to come up and say, do not be afraid. This one's interesting because this angel came to Habakkuk and they weren't like, don't be afraid, I come from God. Like they basically were just like, dude, like, go do this thing. You know, and he was like talking back to it like, okay. He didn't say no, but he was just like, well, I don't know where it is, and I don't know where that is either. And so the angel's like, I'll just put you there then. And he went and visited Daniel, and then the angel took him back. I mean, it was literally like, how did that happen? I don't know. But the angel showed up and took him one place and took him back. And so it was very apparent that this needed to get done. He didn't make Habakkuk wait. It doesn't sound like he was gone for long, because it says 6 days, and then on the 7th day the king came back in. So that was on the 6th day, or was it was either on the 6th or the 7th day when yeah. And it says that Daniel arose and ate, so it's kind of like, I don't know if he was like almost nearly passed out or what, but he ate. And that was probably food for more than one person by the sound of it. Because that was the food that Habakkuk was going to be feeding his farmers. So, yeah, I think that's interesting. And I also think that, I don't know if there was like some transportation going on, some what do you call it? Teleportation going on or something. I don't know, but Habakkuk didn't do that on his own. He didn't get to Daniel on his own. He got there with support, and brought him some food too. So it's like he was communicating with Daniel. He got there. He fed him. I don't know whose account this is. I don't know who wrote the book of Bel and the Dragon, but basically, okay, so you go also, later in the story, after Bel has been destroyed, the temple of Bel is destroyed, it says in that same place, there was a dragon that people of Babylon were worshiping, so they were worshiping a dragon too, so a dragon was there, and I mean, that's just like, okay, like, I get it, it's already an intense story, it's already, a lot. Before the dragon was even introduced, you have people that are priests that are lying so that them and their families can eat. You have people trying to kill other people and people starving lions and people teleporting from one farm into Babylon back to their home farm. And then now you got a dragon. I mean, it's just like, wow, what more can happen here? And not only is there a dragon, but Daniel freaking explodes the dragon. I mean, like, jeez. So basically, there's this dragon. And let me see what I can even try to explain, because this might not make a bit of sense. But there's a dragon. And Daniel knows that this dragon exists, because he sees it. And it is living and breathing, and it eats. It's alive. Like, this is a live, living dragon. I don't know what all you can go through in your life where you've been in multiple lions' dens, been thrown in a fiery furnace, and you're encountering dragons. I mean, Daniel, like, dude, Daniel, like, give him props. On top of that, he's having visions of the apocalypse in the book of Revelations with all these seals and angels and dragons and things happening in Babylon and whatnot. Like, it's a whole thing that, like, he had these either dreams or somebody took him or he was having visions or whatever was happening for Daniel to be writing those prophetic books of Daniel and of Revelations. He was experiencing this on another level, but he experienced it firsthand too. And so, I don't know, guys, like, it's, beyond interesting to me that there would be a dragon because, there are these theories about dragons being, like, a form of alien of some sort, or a form of dragon of some sort, or a form of hybrid type engineered animal. So if you look at, like, ancient Egypt, there are these theories. I mean, this isn't even related, but there are these theories about times in ancient Egypt where they were, like, genetically modifying and, like, engineering new types of scary animals because they had found out how to kind of, like, deal with DNA and, like, cloning and different stuff like that. And they were successful, apparently, according to what I've learned about. They were successful in creating these, like, creatures that were, like, horrifying. And you see it in their writings, you see it in their cultural books and all the kind of, like, ancient artwork and stuff. You see it in there, and it's like, dude, these people were, like, creating, like, monsters, basically, to a point where they were, like, feared. But, I mean, not only do you have angels here, you have dragons, and so you have a dragon that basically people are worshiping. And Daniel decides to go kill it without even using a sword or staff. Like, he's not even taking the proper weapons with him, right? He's like, I'm gonna use hair and fat and pitch. And whatever he used, he caused an explosion and blew up the dragon. So I don't know, guys. I don't know what to think. I don't even know where my head's supposed to be going with all this, because this is a lot to take in. With the dragons, I mean, it's just so matter of fact. Like, I don't know how this is so matter of fact to these people, where it's just like, oh, they have a dragon, or there is a dragon in this same place, in this land, and we're worshiping it now. And then he's like, I'm gonna kill it. And then he blows it up. I mean, like, that's just a really weird, interesting scenario to have happening. It's like, who does this kind of stuff? Like, who thinks like this? What kind of lives are these people living? Which is what, it baffles me. Because it's like, this doesn't even sound like Earth. Like, when you think of it, it's like, this doesn't sound like modern Earth. And if this was over 2,000 years ago, when people were, like, running around, deceiving each other about what's real and what's not, with, like, the priests eating food and stuff, and secret doors to go in places, and then, like, where they leave the food, and then, dragons, where'd the dragon even come from? I don't know, but there were dragons in Babylon, apparently, and I don't know. I mean, it's such a confusing thing. Like, I don't even know where to even go with it. I don't know what the point of the story is, or what the purpose of it is. A lot of times, when you hear sermons and things that are being preached in church, usually it's like, this is a story that's proving that God is real. But it's like, okay, yeah, you could just keep the part about, like, Daniel surviving the lion's den. Like, what's all this other stuff about? Like, him exploding the dragon and the angel coming over and all this other kind of stuff. Is just like, what is going on here? Very confusing kind of book. It's only 42 verses or so. Very interesting, super entertaining. It's a good read. I'd recommend it. I just don't know what to think. I don't know how to think or feel about this book at all. I find it very interesting that there's alien activity in it, or at least things that I would perceive as alien activity, and I'm pretty sure that other people would believe similarly about this. But it's just interesting, like, that there were dragons there too, that there was, beings coming to Habakkuk, taking him to another place and back again within the same day. I mean, like, I don't know where he was, but he was in some place that was the Jewish area. So I don't know if it was like a Jewish quarter, but I doubt it was close if he's never been to Babylon. I mean, Habakkuk was a big name. He was a prophet. He wasn't unpopular. Like, he wasn't not known. And so for him to have never been to, like, a major area, to me is kind of an interesting, it's an interesting kind of circumstance, because he'd never been to Babylon. He didn't know where the lion's den was. It's like, could he not figure that out? I mean, like, where did he live? Like, he must have lived so far, or so, like, deep into some place that was, like, hard to get to. And I mean, I don't think he would have been that far, maybe, because if he had cooked all that food, I mean, I don't know how else he was supposed to get it over to Daniel, if it was a distance. So I think it was close enough by that it was probably easy to get to. Maybe. I don't know. It's really hard for me to tell, honestly, because I don't know, and I'm not looking up all the history of all this stuff. It'll become a rabbit hole that, like, I will never come out of. But yeah, those are just some interesting topics. I think those are all of my notes. Yeah, but yeah, definitely pay attention to those numbers. Pay attention to different things, like like Bel, Baal, like different names of places and people that come up pretty often. Different things that you kind of notice that are repetitious. Dude, Daniel's a man. Like, how is he even like having this life? He's had multiple encounters with lions and kings, and I mean, he must have been like a pimp kind of guy. Like, he must have been intelligent. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say, but I like this story. I like that it was short. It was a quick, fast read. I like that it's got some remnants of Bible stuff in there. The psych part of my brain wants to go almost to Daniel was traumatized by all these things, and that's why he was having all these visions and dreams about seals and, the seals on the letters and about like lions and dragons and things. He was having prophetic visions about these things, and so I wonder if this all happened before all that. Maybe that could be relevant, but I don't really know. But anyways, thanks for listening. I'm gonna cut this off before it becomes an hour. I think I've touched on all the points, but I'm gonna make another one. I'll see what I read next. I'll just read the shortest to the longest. Maybe that, for me, that might be the easiest thing to do, and just so I can keep the momentum up with posting different ones. But I don't even know. This is my take on it. I don't know, dude.